The Pokemon franchise has a ton of great material to pull from if you want to do spooky Halloween themed things. They've got ghouls, ghosts, goblins, mummies, black cats, devil dogs, bats, spiders, and things that will make you question the legitimacy of the entire creature design team at the Pokemon Company. But if you're looking for a spooky deck to play on Halloween that is from a vintage Pokemon format, you're probably not going to find one better than the Callback archetype. Callback is viable in Rocket On and Neo On, but if you want to get the most out of this deck, you'll be playing it in base Neo, which is what we're going to look at today. At the end of the video, I will go over what changes would need to be made in order to accommodate other formats. The initial strategy is that of your classic Dark Crobat build, where you're going to evolve into Dark Golbat and deal 10 damage with Sneak Attack, and then evolve into Dark Crobat, which is going to deal 20 damage with Surprise Bite, and then you can use Hyper Devolution Spray to remove Dark Crobat, play it again next turn, deal another 20 damage. And this is a pretty sneaky way to knock out baby Pokemon or other basic Pokemon with low HP without ever actually attacking. Once you've scored a knockout with this strategy, your opponent is gonna wise up and not be playing any more 30 or 40 HP Pokemon to the bench. And that is where Dark Haunter comes into play, where you can use its callback attack in order to force your opponent to have a baby Pokemon or a low HP basic Pokemon on their bench. You're basically creating a little zombie baby to just sit there on the bench and get knocked out by future Crobats. You've got your Ghosts, you've got your life-draining Bats, and you have Pokemon Resurrection. What a great deck for this time of year.
Let's look at this deck list.
To remain on theme, even my playmat is in costume. We'll be starting out with the Golbat from Neo Revelation. There are a lot of Golbats you can choose from. You got the one from Rocket, you got the one from Fossil. They all have 40 HP, so it's really whatever attacks you like best. For me, it's this one from Neo. And we'll be playing a full playset of all the bats because evolving into Dark Golbat and Dark Crobat is so essential to the strategy. So, full playset of that Neo Zubat, full playset of Dark Golbat from Rocket, and then a full playset of Dark Crobat from Neo Destiny. At the time of creating this video, at the end of October 2020, we are in the middle of a Pokemon card craze, completely revitalized, and that has driven up the cost of Dark Crobat from about $18 to $20 each to $60 to $70 each. So if you like the deck, you want to play it, just use proxies if you don't have the cards, because that is some ridiculous dollary dues you're going to have to put out for some pieces of cardboard. Next is a full playset of Gastly from Fossil, the best Gastly available with 50 HP and an attack for 1 energy. 1 Psychic Energy is all you will ever need to attack, which is great for base Neo because you're not going to care about any energy removals or super energy removals. And that Lick attack can come in handy, as the first time you drop a Crobat, you're going to have 30 damage on a Pokemon, but if it's a basic Pokemon that has 40 or 50 HP, like a lot of them do, you're going to need to deal some extra damage in between turns, especially if you can't get that Hyper Devolution Spray fast enough or get more Dark Golbats or Dark Crobats into your hand to start evolving those bats on your bench. Lick can help push a Pokemon over the edge into knockout range for those bats just by using Lick and putting 1 damage counter on it. Full playset of that Dark Haunter to utilize its callback attack and accomplish the entire purpose of the deck, and then 1 copy of Dark Gengar for the sole purpose of pulling Grimers and Mucks off of the bench and hitting them for super effective damage, because if you let your opponent get a Muck down, this deck does nothing. Your Dark Golbats and your Dark Crobats aren't going to be able to accomplish anything, and you're not going to win any matches just relying on Lick and Dark Haunter's surround attack. Full playset of Professor Elm, as there is no Cleffa in this deck, so Elm will be serving as your draw power and your hand refresher. 4 copies of the Boss's Way, that way you can quickly search out those Dark Golbats and Dark Crobats. People underestimate Dark Crobat decks all the time because they think, well, you know, just like evolving and dealing 10 damage and then evolving again and dealing 20 damage, that's a pretty slow way to deal damage, and it's not a lot. What they don't anticipate is when you're evolving 3 different bats all in the same turn, placing damage counters everywhere, you can get knockouts so quickly and so easily just by evolving Pokemon over and over again. And with Callback, it makes it even easier to do because you can just take the weakest Pokemon with the lowest HP, put them right back on the bench, and it's so easy to just redo your setup every single turn, get those easy 30 damage knockouts. Playset of Focus Band for those Dark Haunters so you can use Callback without being afraid of getting knocked out right after you use it. Because Dark Haunter doesn't gain any HP from evolving from Gastly. 50 HP is pretty low for base Neo, very easy to knock out, so you do need a Focus Band on there. Hyper Devolution Spray so you can go from Crobat to Golbat, back to Crobat, get the maximum amount of damage out of those surprise bites. Playset of Scoop Up as kind of a last resort to deprive your opponent of taking prizes, as if your Focus Band works, if it reduces a Pokemon down to 10 HP, you don't want it to get knocked out next turn, just use Scoop Up, your opponent's not going to be able to take a prize off of it, and it's not going to be Gust Bait anymore. 3 copies of Good Manners to make sure that you get as many Zubats down on your bench as possible. There's no reason to be searching out your Dark Golbats and Dark Crobats with Boss's Way if you don't already have the Zubats down on the bench a turn before you're going to start evolving. Now, if your opponent knows that you're playing a Dark Crobat deck, they're not going to play any low HP Pokemon down to the bench because they know your strategy. Well, that's why we've got a couple copies of Erica's Perfume. That way you can look at their hand, find those low HP Pokemon, and put them onto the bench yourself. And then 2 copies of Rocket's Hideout as the stadium, as the gym for this deck. That way you get a little bit of an HP boost for your bats and your ghosts. It's going to help them survive a little bit longer since they're all pretty low HP. And then topping off the deck with 12 Psychic Energy. Like I said earlier, you only need 1 Psychic Energy to attack, so you would even be good with 8 or 10 energy. In retrospect, I probably would actually remove a couple of those Psychic Energies and replace them with Nightly Garbage Run. That way you do have a method to get back your bat evolutions if you use a Scoop Up on one of them. The extra energy were really just in there to make sure you had enough on hand to use Dark Gengar's pull in if your opponent did surprise you by dropping a Grimer, and you kind of have to scramble to find the Dark Gengar in your deck. That way you can evolve it and use pull in next turn, but also get those extra energy attached. For the Rocket On playlist on my channel, I tried to keep it for just Rocket through Neo Genesis, but with Wizards of the Coast, they did expand that format by the time they had the World Championships that year to include basically all of Neo. So there is a version of Rocket On where you can play Callback, and the only change you would have to make is to replace your Scoop Ups with Super Scoop Ups, and replace your Fossil Gastly with Neo Gastly. For Neo On, things get a little bit weirder because you can use Fossil Gastly because it was reprinted in Legendary Collection, as was Boss's Way, so searching out your evolution cards with Dark in their name was still just as easy. The problem is that in Neo On, there is no legal copy of Dark Golbat, and so if you want to evolve into Dark Crobat, you have to use the reprinted Pokemon Breeder to go straight from Zubat into Dark Crobat. In doing so, you're missing out on that sneak attack damage, which does really hurt this deck, and when you use Hyper Devolution Spray on Crobat, you'll be devolving back into 40 HP Zubat, which is more vulnerable than Dark Golbat by a little bit. To compensate for that missing sneak attack damage from Dark Golbat, a lot of people would use 1 copy of Haunter and 1 copy of Gengar from Fossil that was reprinted in Legendary Collection. That way you can move damage counters around, and this just gives you a way to deal that extra 10 damage to a Pokemon on your turn, assuming that there's already a damage counter on another Pokemon that you can move. And of course, replace your copies of Good Manners with Town Volunteers. And then Undersea Ruins was basically made for this deck as it gives you another tool to maximize your surprise bite damage. And that is the Callback archetype. As I said at the beginning, it is viable across formats, but I think that base Neo is probably where it hits its peak. As always, let me know down in the comments what you think. What changes would you make, and what experiences do you have playing this deck? Links to social media are down in the description. Stay tuned to the channel for more vintage Pokemon TCG content, and until next video, happy Halloween, bye!